Welcome to the Money Mile Podcast. I am your host, Justin Waller, and I am happy you are here. We like to think of Money Mile as standing at the corner of triathlon and personal finance. And we believe that age group triathletes are the lifeblood of our sport, and we want to shine the light on some good people doing great things in our sport. Today, we are joined by Dana Bullard. Dana is a mother of two who married her high school sweetheart. Dana is a former runner, having won a few marathons, but don't hold that against her because she is a certified bona fide triathlete now, as she has finished 26 Ironmans and qualified for and finished Kona a total of 6 times. Dana, welcome to Money Mile.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
Dana, if we are doing this correctly, our listeners are out there somewhere on their long run. So we'll put links in the show notes so our listeners can catch up with you and some folks in your life that are important to you that we'll talk about today. And for our listeners, don't forget to stick around for our questions on course segment at the end of the show, where we talk through some common questions that I get as a financial planner to help you build your financial fitness while you are taking care of your physical fitness. But before we get too far into that side, let's dig in with Dana. Dana, I mentioned in the intro that you are a former runner, but could you please share with us a little bit more about how you got into triathlon?
Yeah, I started out as a runner. I ran in high school and in college at the University of Texas for cross country and track on scholarship. After college, I started doing a lot of 5Ks to 10Ks, and like you said, I've won a few marathons. I was getting a little bored with just running, getting kind of a little burnt out. I had a coworker that asked me if I wanted to do a sprint triathlon with her. It sounded fun, but there's only one problem. I didn't know how to swim and I didn't have a bike. So I went to the pool and couldn't even get down and back without stopping. So that was kind of a problem. But fortunately, because I had so much endurance from running, it wasn't long and I was able to complete the 300 yards that the sprint triathlon required. So I borrowed a bike and then decided to just go for it. It was just a small local triathlon. Part of the run was up in a parking structure, so that was odd. But it was so much fun, and I came out of the water one of the slowest swimmers, but I found I was decent on the bike, and then ran by a ton of people and ended up getting third place female, which obviously pumped me up and said, hey, wait, this is kind of fun. I might be kind of good at this. So it was the end of the season, so I couldn't do any more that year, but I decided over the off season to just go ahead and start training for triathlons, and the next year entered every single sprint or Olympic I could find. And I was hooked. I found it was so much more fun than just running, because I could, your day wasn't only running, you could do one of the three. And then also I could show improvement. I was horrific at swimming. And so I was being able to constantly get better at swimming and biking. And that was fun and motivating.
Oh, that's great. Having such a strong running focus early on in your athletic career, it makes sense. That's certainly a strength that you can carry forward, but also now you have some different options, a little bit more cross training. I know running can be pretty abusive to the body, and I'm glad to see that you have joined us over on the triathlon side of things. Seems like that first experience with triathlon was a good one, and you have expanded tremendously since then. So I'm really glad that you made that transition.
Yeah, it's been fun.
I have found that success means different things to different people. So I'm curious, Dana, in your world as you see it now, how are you defining success?
Since I mainly do Ironman triathlons, success for me has always been Kona. My first Ironman was in Ironman Cozumel in 2009, and I missed Kona by one slot. It was a brand new race. I was the 4th overall amateur woman, but I was 3rd in my age group, and they only gave out 2 spots. And so it was a big bummer. Yeah. But, looking back on it now, I'm kind of glad that I didn't get the spot, because I think then it would have kind of seemed too easy. And it made me more motivated to keep working hard. It took 7 more Ironmans to get a Kona spot. Ironman, as they added races, they kept dropping the number of spots that they would give out in each race. And so it became harder and harder to get one. So when that 8th Ironman, when I finally got a spot, it made it that much more sweet.
You really earned it at that point. Yeah, that's great.
Even as I've gotten older, I feel like Kona is still my goal, but I'm trying to prioritize other improvements. I'm actually somehow still getting PRs even as a 46-year-old. I don't know. I'm still just trying to improve on the swim and the bike, and then still the run. But I tend to go with the longer distances versus the shorter ones.
And I'm sure we'll talk a little bit more about that. As I understand it, you have missed Kona by one slot, not just the one time, but 5 times.
Yeah, there's been a lot of tears. Yeah, it's been frustrating. But like I said, then that makes it that much more sweet when you finally do get it.
Yeah, certainly. I think that that's an interesting perspective. I haven't ever heard anyone concerned about Ironman having been too easy in order for them to reach their goals. That definitely shows that you are on your game for sure. I too am glad that it was harder than you thought it might have been. Who knows where we would have been otherwise. As I mentioned in the introduction, we like to think of Money Mile as standing at the intersection between triathlon and personal finance. What would you consider to be the best investment in the form of time, energy, or money that you've made in your athletic career?
I think the best thing that we've made investment wise is spending money to help me be more aero on the bike. It's such a massive difference in triathlon. My husband's really, really supportive, and he's always doing research on ways that can help me be faster to save watts on the bike. And so he'll always come to me and say, "Hey, I found this new little thing you should try." And, we've kind of tinkered with things over the years. There's so many things: an aero bike, wheels, tires, with lower rolling resistance, helmets, calf sleeves, a tri suit that's short sleeve versus sleeveless, an aero water bottle, shoes, pedals, all of that helps me cut through the air faster. And my bike times actually dropped 15 to 20 minutes on average, even as I've gotten older. And while I'm doing that, I'm generating lower watts and going faster. And that also helps me run off the bike faster because my legs aren't nearly as tired. So it kind of helps overall in the triathlon, not just on the bike. And some of those things are inexpensive and some are really not, but some of them can make a pretty big difference.
I know with my experience within triathlon, the comfort of the bike for me made a huge difference. Have you done extensive work as far as like fitting on the bike and that sort of thing?
Somewhat. We're actually wanting to go to like a wind tunnel to try to do a little bit more. But yeah, I'm pretty small. I'm only like 5'2". And so I struggle with some of the bikes being too big for me. I used to be on a 650 wheel until they really didn't start supporting them anymore. And so I had to move to a 700. And so I'm just slammed all the way down, as far as possible. But yeah, I'm pretty well fit now on my bike. So I can cut through there pretty well.
And has there been an investment that you made that you think was a significant waste of time or money, something you would want others to avoid?
I think my biggest thing when I first started, as I went to a local bike shop and they convinced me I should get a road bike, even though they knew I was going to be doing triathlons. One of the reasons was group rides. I mean, they made up all these reasons, I think, and they just wanted to sell the bike, to be honest. But I believed them and bought a road bike and quickly realized that was not for me. The difference in running off of a tri bike versus a road bike is pretty significant. And so it was better to go ahead and get a tri bike. So we sold that and then got a tri bike, but a low end one. And then we realized, we kind of kept moving up and getting better bikes. So I kind of ended up wasting a lot of time and money until I got the bike that worked best for me. And so I think that was a big waste of money. We should have just realized how competitive we were from the start and realized that we probably should just jump right in with both feet.
By we, I'm assuming you mean you and your husband?
Yes.
Okay. So it sounds like he is very invested in your athletic career.
He's very invested, yes.
So, yeah, that's great. I realize that can be a difficult spot for some folks. If they look at the super bikes out there, say, oh, well, I could spend $12,000 on a bike, but I haven't completed a sprint triathlon yet. Everybody's got to find their own journey. And generally, I recommend, start small. Or if you're going to do it once, then, go accordingly. But if you're thinking, oh, I might really like this, and who knows, maybe someday I'll end up running 26 Ironmans, then okay, yeah, it's okay to invest up a little bit and lean in.
Or buy used initially too, even.
Yeah, it can be a great opportunity there. If you don't have perhaps a community where you can, borrow a bike and buy a used one, that can be a great way. An unfortunate reality is that a lot of road bike shops don't necessarily carry a true triathlon bike or TT bike. They don't necessarily carry that stuff on a daily basis because we are pretty niche in what we're doing. I understand, going to the first bike shop, they're going to sell you what they've got. But I think it's great input. So as far as the community is concerned, they should think about that as they're going out looking at bikes. Like, okay, you might want to be shopping around a little bit and look, if you're looking at triathlon stuff, you might want to look for a triathlon bike. And there are, depending upon where you go, you might have more options or less options. And so as I understand it, currently you are not a sponsored athlete. Is that accurate?
That's correct.
Okay. So would you mind sharing the type of bike you have and what you like about it?
I have a Cervelo P5D. I've had it for about 4 or 5 years now. It works really well for me, but it's like a size 48. I'm pretty small, so
Okay. I don't know how much smaller they make those bikes, but that's great.
it's really worked well for me.
It's working well for you now. Is there anything else on the horizon that like, oh, hey, well, the next bike's going to be a whatever? Or are you pretty happy with what you have now?
My husband's looking at a different one. We're not sure quite yet, but I think we are looking at a different one probably in the next year or so.
Okay. Yeah, technology improves and all that stuff.
Right.
My tri bike still has rim brakes, so like I'm old school now.
I wish mine did.
Yeah. There are always improvements, technology-wise, material-wise, all of those things. So you could try to be at the forefront of all of that stuff, or you can find a bike that works really well for you and ride it for a while. So definitely lots of options out there. As I understand it, you had a first place finish in your age group this year at 70.3 Gulf Coast race with a time of 4 hours and 53 minutes. Did I get that right?
Yes.
Congratulations on a fantastic finish. That's way faster than I've ever gone. Well, I have gone faster than that in a race, but the race was kind of suspect, so I wouldn't really count that one. It was one of those that, like, hey, I click my Garmin at the end. It's like that run was 12 miles. What
I've
happened?
had one of those, yeah.
Like something's up. But 4 hours and 53 minutes is a tremendous accomplishment. That is just fantastic. I was hoping you could share with us a little bit about your race experience there and how everything went down.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, everything just went really well in that training cycle. I had really worked on improving my power on the bike going into it. I tend to get, as you get older, you tend to get injured. I didn't have an injury this training cycle, which really helped. I also was up at altitude for the couple months before the race. My daughter was ski racing in Park City, Utah. And so I think training up at altitude helped my overall fitness for sure. I was also here in the Dallas area. There's not really a lot of hills. And so I was able to run on a lot of, steep hills that I don't really have here. So that really helped my training. And then once I got to the race, it was kind of similar to how most of my races go. I swim okay, but I'm usually pretty far back. And then I bike up past a lot of people. This time I had a fantastic bike. It ended up being my fastest 70.3 bike split and my highest wattage effort. So I was really, really happy with that. And then once I got on the run, I was holding myself back because I was a little nervous about, cratering at the end. But then I just felt so good. I just kept building and getting faster each mile. And so I ended up negative splitting the run and having my fastest run split as well. I really liked this course. It was 3 loops for half marathon, which is kind of a lot. And it had almost like a figure 8 type thing where people could see you in 2 different spots. So my mom was there watching me and she ended up being able to see me 8 times on the run, which really helped, get my mind off things. And then I feel like even though the course getting crowded is hard, it also makes it, I almost feel like it's Frogger as I'm trying to dodge people and get past them. And so it kind of keeps your mind off of the pain that you're going through and how much longer you have. And it just kind of pumped me up trying to focus on passing the next person. And it ended up just working out really well. The great weather day, the course was flat. Everything just worked out perfectly.
That is wonderful. Well, I will admit, I'm not that end with my running. I'm usually out of the water towards the front and then try to hold on for dear life for the rest of the race. But I can imagine, especially with a multi-loop course, there's always somebody else that you can run down. And if you have the running chops to do that, to negative split your run, we all shoot for that, sure. But to actually do it and execute that well, that is fantastic. Kudos to you.
Thank you. Yeah, it was fun.
Now, does your mom get to watch a lot of your races?
Yeah, she's come to quite a few. I'd say probably half. She's come to every Kona and several of the 70.3s, and they come to almost every Cozumel. So they kind of come to the destination ones. It helped when the kids were little, and then they could help out with the kids on race day, and then also see us. Yeah, they're very supportive as well.
Certainly sounds like you're keeping triathlon in the family to some extent. You mentioned your daughter is a ski racer. I don't really think of Texas as a whole lot of great skiing going on, but Park City is nice. How did she get started with ski racing?
We actually lived in Utah when she was little for a while. And so she started ski racing when she was 6. And then when we moved back to Texas, it's kind of interesting. That's another reason why my schedule was so crazy, because when we came back to Texas after she had been racing for a few years, she still wanted to race. And so we kind of worked it out where she and I would go back for the winters and Kobe and Blake would stay here in Texas. And so she would race, in Utah up there. And so we kind of would split the year halftime. So she's just now decided she's not going to ski anymore after 10 years. But yeah, that's been our kind of life for the last 7 years or so.
a very interesting family dynamic. And obviously everybody's very supportive of each other and their athletic
Absolutely.
endeavors. That's wonderful that you're all supporting each other's. What would you consider to be the most underrated aspect of triathlons, or something you think more triathletes should know about?
I think nutrition, early on, I focused so much on training, but nutrition was really an afterthought. But I would really struggle on the run. And I realized after a while that a lot of it was nutrition based. Sometimes I would drink way too much on the bike. And so my stomach would just be completely full of water and it's just sloshing around. And then that would make me not feel great. Or I would not eat enough calories and I'd get dizzy. And obviously that doesn't go well when you're doing half marathon or full marathon, or you'd have too much and same thing, you just have issues. So I think people struggle with it, but it's so important, especially in the longer racing, not as much in the sprints, but in the longer racing for sure. But it's so individual. You can't just say, oh, well, just do this and it's great. It's going to be different for everybody. And you have to figure out what works best for you, which means a lot of trial and error. And there's so many products that you can just try to see what might work for you and then tinker with it. I'm still not perfect at it. I'm still struggle with it, but I've gotten a lot better where I haven't had so many of the issues that I used to have.
Oh, that's great. It does take some experimentation with that sort of thing to find out the right things for you. I've also heard that over time, gut health can change and different dynamics can change. You need to keep an eye on that. I don't want to give anybody the wrong idea. I'm not saying you need to do 26 Ironmans to figure out your nutrition plan, but it might help if you do more of that. You get more familiar with what works for you and what doesn't work for you and kind of work through some of those things. I will throw out the general disclaimer, nothing new on race day. Let's just keep that in mind. We don't want to mess with anything on race day, but working through all of the training that goes into doing 26 Ironmans, you have a lot of opportunity to work on that nutrition and the hydration side of things and figure out what works. And hey, this works well on the bike, but I can't run afterwards. Like we have a very complex problem to solve. That's one of the things that I like about triathlon is there's always something you can do different and find a better way to do things. Sounds like you're enjoying some of that as well. It is time for a quick form check. Money Mile is powered by Waller Financial Coaching, a full-time fiduciary financial planning firm. If you want to improve your financial form and improve your financial independence, you can get a copy of Financial Independence for Triathletes by texting Money Mile, one word, to 33777. You will also be added to the Money for the Long Run newsletter. Again, text Money Mile, one word, to 33777. Now let's check in on that running form. If you have your own form cues, please use those. If not, here are mine. Drop your shoulder blades into your back pockets. Bring your eyes up to the horizon and lean forward from the ankles for the rest of this episode of Money Mile. Has there ever been a turning point for you in your training and racing career? And if so, what did that look like for you?
I think the biggest thing is I was always a strong runner, but a lot of times I was struggling to run well in the longer triathlons. You talked about my husband and I knowing each other forever. He actually coached me when I was running in summer track and then after we graduated college. And so he started coaching me for triathlons as well. But he was a runner too. And so we were both kind of new to triathlon. And so after doing some Ironmans for a few years and I continually missing out on Kona, we kind of decided, hey, this is something that we need to invest in. And so we found a coach and it's really been the best thing for my training and racing. My coach he's an accomplished Ironman athlete. He's gone under 9 hours, qualified for Kona tons of times. And he's just completely changed my training and it's just helped tremendously. I didn't know what I didn't know. And I didn't realize that I wasn't doing anywhere near enough biking or that I wasn't doing enough efforts in all three disciplines. I think one thing that Kobe had struggled with, he's my husband, right? He doesn't want to put a workout out there that seems, quote, mean or, a little bit too hard. And so once he started seeing some of the stuff that Scott would put out there, he's like, oh, wow, that looks really good. But I would have felt like, that would have been too mean to give you that too, But it's really helped. In my first 8 Ironmans before Scott, I had 2 top 5 finishes and then 1 Kona qualifier. And since then, it's been like total game changer. I've been in the top 5, 8 out of the last 12 Ironmans, never finished lower than 9th, and then qualified for Kona 5 more times. It basically made everything more consistent. It's not to say I still don't have bad days, but I have the training behind me to push through it and still finish stronger than I had before. And it's just made a huge, huge difference.
It sounds like Kobe was doing great work beforehand and doing everything he could. It sounds like there might have been a little bit of a personal barrier there. So didn't want to be the one throwing out the hard workout for you.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't know that that would necessarily hold someone back, but getting that professional objectivity from a coach that knows what they're doing seems like that's really been a big benefit to you in your athletic career.
And getting the coach was all Kobe's idea too. He says all the time, he's like, I just fired myself because he's like, I realized that that you needed more. And so I'm going to support you in doing this instead.
That is tremendous perspective from Kobe. So we have it in the notes here. Who is your coach now? You mentioned Scott.
Scott Ayat, he's with Superfly Coaching.
Okay.
So he's actually based out of Chicago, so it's all virtual.
Okay. And how did you find Scott initially?
Actually, a client of my husband used Scott as a coach as well, and he had recommended him. I started working with him in 2013, so it's been a good long while.
Yeah, you've had a good run at it so far. So if it's okay with you, I would like to include Scott's contact information in the show notes as well, just in case anybody else is looking for a good coach that has obviously delivered results with their athletes. So would that be okay?
Yeah.
As we're looking at that, obviously, consistency and training and all that helps over time. It's like, this is not your first rodeo. You've been doing this a lot. You've brought in experts to help and obviously seeing great results from that. One of the unique things that I've seen over time, it seems like for a lot of folks, the training community that they work with can have a big impact on their experience and their enjoyment. But you have a little bit different experience with your training community. I should put that in air quotes, training community. Can you tell us a little bit about your training and how you work that these days?
Yeah, I'm probably unique because I don't really train and race with other people very often. When my kids were growing up, our schedule was crazy. They were on all different sports. And like I said, the skiing, and then with living in 2 different states half the year, it just didn't really lend itself to training consistently with other people. I also tend to do the majority of my training indoors. There's just not really that many areas out here to bike. I do 95% of my training on Zwift. So it's just different. And since I don't do local races very often, it's mostly national races. I'm not really involved in the local triathlon community either. So it's kind of a lot of just doing it by myself. It's fine if you can manage it. I just watch a lot of movies on the bike and stuff, but it's just a little bit different. I wish, I do have a friend that I've been in the last year or 2 running with, which has really helped. But for the most part, I do everything on my own.
That takes a lot of mental fortitude to be able to do that sort of thing. I think of training for an Ironman on Zwift, and my hands get a little clammy. I mean, I love Zwift. I'm a big fan. I know there are other platforms out there. There are lots of different technology you can use out there. But I think of training for an Ironman bike ride on a trainer, it does make me a little bit nervous. So again, kudos to you. You're obviously putting in the right amount of time, doing the right things, and it's working for you. And also being able to do that more as a solo person and kind of doing your own training. I know for me, it's nice if I'm not necessarily having a great day, but I know the buddy of mine they're like, oh, well, I don't want to hold him back, so I'm going to go ahead and push a little bit. And then I can kind of lean into that a little bit more. I enjoy kind of being able to play off of other training efforts that are going on. I know sometimes that works for folks, and you are absolute proof that it's not required. You can do it on your own if you are so inclined, and that is awesome. Lots of things going on out in sport in general. I am kind of curious from your perspective, Dana, who is it that you admire most in sport today?
So, and this sounds weird. I probably have to say the person in triathlon I admire most is my son, Blake. He just turned 18. He's a senior in high school, and he did his first triathlon when he was 4, but he didn't just kind of did him off and on. He didn't focus on him until he was 14. And because my husband and I were both runners, we didn't let him run competitively until middle school. We just didn't want him to get burned out. But in high school, he both ran cross country and swam competitively. And he's been on a total of 4 Texas 6A state championships already. And then as a triathlete, he's the number 2 U.S. junior, which is U19. And he's ranked in the top 10 globally for U19s. So he just recently got 2nd place at the U.S. Junior Nationals, which qualified him to compete in the World Junior Championships in Spain next month, representing the U.S. So he's definitely the hardest worker I know. I don't know. He does so much because even with me doing Ironman training, he'll do more than I do. And he's doing sprint distances. And he does all that with, maintaining a 99.5 GPA, doing AP classes, balancing school. It's really impressive. I really admire him. He just recently joined USA Triathlon's Project Podium. I don't know if you've heard of that. It's a elite development program. It's designed to take the top U.S. male triathletes and help them earn medals at the Olympics. So he's joining them after he graduates early here in December and will compete as a professional triathlete during college instead of taking the NCAA route.
That's impressive. And I know the NC2A world there's been a lot of news about the ladies competing at the NC2A level, having scholarship capacity and all that stuff. As I understand it, the NC2A level for male triathletes is not nearly as robust. It's a club only type of infrastructure. So it makes sense that if he has the opportunity, he's that type of athlete that can perform at that level. Absolutely makes sense that he would be making that adjustment. But that he sounds like quite a young man, quite an athlete, and it sounds like I don't want to say it's necessarily in the blood, but your daughter's a ski racer. He started triathlons at age 4, so he's had a good long runway up to here. And you mentioned that Kobe was a runner as well. You definitely have strong athletics going on in the family. That is fantastic. So just in case other folks in the community would like to follow along and learn a little bit more about Blake's journey with the Project Podium and all of that, would it be okay with you if we put links for his social media and whatnot in the show notes as well?
Yep, that'd be great.
Wonderful. Who knows? Maybe we'll have Blake on the show at some point. Talk a little bit more about that high-end performance on the draft legal side. The Olympic stuff, I've always been geared as the longer distance athlete. I could probably count maybe on both hands the number of sprint and Olympic distance races I've done in my life. But it sounds like he really leans into that and is excelling. So that is wonderful. So we'll definitely get the word out to our community as well and wish him all the best in his future endeavors as well.
Thank you.
What is your A race at this point?
Right now, my A race is Ironman Arizona. I love that course. It sets up really well for me. I'm kind of a grinder on the bike. I can get in just one gear and just hammer away. A lot of people kind of need the hills or a varied course or they get bored, but I'm not like that. I really thrive on those kind of flattish courses where you just need to maintain the same pace the whole time, like Arizona or Texas or Cozumel. So I'm really looking forward to it. I haven't done it in a few years, but I've had 3 of my top 5 fastest Ironman finishes at Arizona. So I'm hoping that I can be close to that there this year.
Okay, awesome. And that is November?
Mm-hmm. It's November 16th or 18th.
Something like that. Okay. For those of you that are listening to this at some point in the future, we're recording this towards the end of September 2024. So Dana, how has your buildup been for your A race? We got, what is that, 6 weeks, 8 weeks?
It's been pretty well. I keep getting a little dinged up as I get older. I keep getting little injuries here and there, but nothing too bad. I'm actually doing after whatever Gulf Coast was in May. So over the summer, I've been pretty well. We actually spent the summer in Park City again. And so I was able to do some more altitude training there as well. And then I'm going to compete in the age group world championships in Spain as well. So I'm trying to kind of do a little bit of a fast stuff for that. But it's been going pretty well. I just need to stay injury free and I think I'll be okay.
Well, we wish you the best of luck at that and competing in Spain. That's wonderful as well. May not necessarily be your specialty. Probably not going to give you enough time to really outrun a lot of folks in the shorter races, but still competing in Spain, wish you the best of luck with that one as well. If you only had $100 to spend on triathlon gear, what is it that you would buy?
Yeah, a triathlon gear can be kind of expensive. So I'm not sure, it's hard to find too much stuff that you can buy for less than $100. But I'd probably say some Aero calf sleeves and Aero shoe covers because you can get them both for under $100. And I think they can help have some like wattage savings that are pretty significant to help on the bike. And since the bike's the longest of the 3, I feel like that can help the most.
Yeah, that's wonderful. I appreciate the input. So I fully recognize I ask a weird question about triathlon and money right there. So there isn't a whole lot within triathlon you can do for $100. But I love that suggestion. I've not heard that before. So it sounds like you're a big fan of the calf sleeves as an aero piece of equipment.
Yeah, not like the compression sleeves. They're different. They kind of have the little lines in them or whatever. But they once I started wearing them, I was dubious as well. But once I started wearing them, I did notice a decent difference.
Oh. Interesting.
It's faster than your skin.
Okay. And then the shoe covers, obviously, if you're doing longer distance races, you don't necessarily have to worry about that. If you're doing a sprint, you might not necessarily be as dialed into, hey, we've got to get the shoe covers, aligned right or whatever. But for longer races, that makes sense. I'll have to do some more research. I'll have to look into these Aero calf sleeves, see how that might work. And is there anything else that you would like the world to know about your journey in triathlon?
Yeah, I guess I might not be the most talented triathlete, especially since I'm not the best swimmer in the world, but I've just been like resilient and consistent for a really long time. Even if I've done well or if I've failed, I just keep going with my own journey and my own, trying to get my own goals completed. I've had a lot of setbacks with us moving across the country a few times with injuries, a couple pregnancies. A few years ago, I had half of my liver and a 8-pound tumor taken out of my abdomen. And that was a pretty big setback. Also, as I mentioned before, I'm not in an area that lends itself to outdoor training. So I have to do 95% of my training indoors. So that's not ideal for a lot of people. But even with that, in the last 18 months, I've had personal best at the Olympic, the 70.3, and the Ironman distance, even though I'm about to turn 47. So I feel like that is just a testament to being able to overcome obstacles and stay consistent.
Well, that is amazing. I would love to be able to still think that I can, have PRs at this point in my career. We're kind of similar age groups here. So I would love to think that I could still hit PRs. And it seems like I'm just trying not to slow down too much. That's what I'm trying to do. So kudos to you on your athletic career thus far. It sounds like you have accomplished a lot and still have a bright future ahead of you. I was a little bit curious there. You just kind of mentioned that you had half of your liver removed and an 8-pound tumor. Could you tell us a little bit about that? Would you feel comfortable sharing?
Yeah, that's fine. I guess 2019 I did Kona and then I did Ironman Arizona not long after, and I just didn't feel quite right on either of them. Just really tired, and so I kind of took a break. And then when I came back after that, I still was feeling really tired. So I started going to the doctor and got some blood work done, and they found just some outrageous liver numbers. Had an MRI and they found some big tumors in my liver, and then a huge tumor that my liver had kicked off. And so after doing some biopsies and stuff, they found, fortunately, it was not cancerous, but it was, pushing my organs aside and there was a risk of rupture. So they had to take it out. So in September of 2020, I had to have major surgery, was in the hospital for 6 days. And it was pretty challenging. It was major, major surgery. So I still have some nodules in the other half that they didn't take out that we're having to watch forever. But yeah, for the most part, I'm fine and just can go on with my normal life from now on. And fortunately, like I said, no cancer. So it's just a matter of managing going forward. It was very hard because I couldn't even walk to the mailbox after a week after the surgery, and going from doing Ironman just a few months before to then literally not even being able to walk was really disheartening, and it was really hard. My husband, he was like, no, we got to go walk around the block. He was really pushing me because the easy thing would just be to sit on the couch and just wallow. But no, he really helped push me to get back to, and help me heal faster, which was really awesome. And yeah, it took a few months before I could run and a few more months before I could swim and, before I could kind of come back, anything triathlon related. But I actually did Ironman Maryland almost a year exactly after my surgery, and ended up getting fifth in my age group. Cratered on the run because I didn't quite have the fitness that I'd had before, but I had a PR on the bike. So it kind of everything, I don't know, it was just kind of neat to be able to come back that strong after such a bad surgery.
Oh, wow. Being able to come back. Some folks, they have the surgery and that's kind of game over for them. They just never get back into it. But it sounds like Team Bullard pulled together and got you through that and got you back on the bike and moving forward. I certainly don't want you to, divulge any confidential medical information or anything like that. But, having developed an 8-pound tumor in the course of your athletic career, I assume that didn't just show up overnight. Did the doctors tell you anything like, oh, now you need to be doing this different, or heaven forbid, like stay away from that particular beverage or gel or whatever? Did they give you any pointers to prevent it?
Yeah, it's kind of weird. They think that it was actually birth control, long-term use of oral birth control that caused it. They said it's ridiculously rare. But so I'm not allowed to be on any hormones forever now because of that. But yeah, pretty sure that's what caused it. Again, super rare. I'm not saying don't people stay off birth control or anything, but
yes, thank you for the disclaimers on that.
Yeah.
Yes, please consult your doctor, do what you need
Yes.
to do. This was a very unique situation there. Well, I appreciate you sharing that, recognizing that everybody's situation is different. And even after completing multiple Ironmans, it's not uncommon that somebody's going to feel a little tired. but being self-aware enough to know like, hey, this is different. This is not the normal tired, and consulting with your physician, getting checked out and getting things taken care of. I know surgery can be problematic and challenging, and it's hard to come back from, but I'm so glad that you did that and you're back to full health at this point and able to get out there. And we wish you the best of luck here in a couple months when you're racing in Arizona and when you're racing in Spain. We hope everything goes tremendously well for all of those endeavors, and we look forward to a bright future ahead of you, Dana. So thank you very much for sharing your story and coming on and sharing your experience here with the Money Mile community. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
If you would like to connect with Dana, we will have a link to her Facebook profile on our show notes, and we'll also include the links for Blake's social media as well. Some really interesting stuff on there. I am not super familiar with the draft legal world, but some pretty interesting stuff on there, so I highly recommend you check that out, and I'm going to look a little bit more into that Project Podium program. Sounds interesting. We'll now move on to our questions on course segment. To paraphrase the question I received recently, it was, what should we be doing 15 years from retirement to improve our nest egg? I've got 4 steps here that I would recommend you start with. The first of which is to understand where you are in relation to your goal. Second is to understand your strengths and weaknesses of your financial situation. Third is to optimize what you're currently doing. And fourth is to look toward adding new strategies if there are any specific gaps. So let's dig in on those. First is understanding where you are in relation to your goal. It is absolutely possible that you might be ahead of pace for the goal that you have in mind or what you're trying to accomplish. You might also be behind and need to save more money. And ultimately, you can always have more money. That is a common challenge that I see with triathletes. More is like faster. So I can have more money. It can always be faster. But if you have enough, or you're on track for the future that you want to have, you might want to consider, could it be a better time to invest in other things like your relationship with your kids or your family? Maybe make some memories before the kids leave the house, or maybe just enjoy more of your life now. Other ideas there, you might want to do some traveling or maybe invest in that new tri bike. I don't know. But the key here is to understand where you are in relation to your goals. There are a lot of people out there that are saving because they feel they have to. There's this compulsion to save without really understanding where they are in relation to their goals. Here, I would suggest at least getting a second opinion from a professional financial planner. I know we've talked about this on here before, but you should avoid getting financial advice from product salespeople. I am a proponent of working with a fee-only financial planner, so you get objective advice on where you are and what you need to do moving forward. The second piece of this is that assuming you've gone through step 1 and you know where you are in relation to your goals, and assuming you're not where you want to be financially, develop an understanding of what your strengths and weaknesses are. An example here is that if you have a significant pension or something like that, you may not need to worry too much about the fixed income side of the equation, but in reality, these income streams don't keep pace with inflation over time. So in your situation, you might be best served by developing a liquid and marketable portfolio that will be better able to help maintain purchasing power over time. There are lots of different things out there and different things that can be areas of strengths and weaknesses. So going through that and understanding where you are is step number 2 in relation to your strengths and weaknesses. The third piece is that most of the folks that I work with have some financial strategies in place already when we start working together. But there are lots of things you can do to improve the financial strategies you already have in place. So can you optimize these things? I would suggest looking into what you are currently doing and identifying if there are ways to do better. An example of this might be to increase your savings into an employer-sponsored retirement plan, or maybe it's refinancing a mortgage. Things change over time, so kind of keep your eyes out and look for ways to optimize or refine what you're currently doing. And the fourth step here is to look at adding new strategies if there are specific gaps. An example is that if you do not have a plan to pay less in taxes in retirement, you might want to consider evaluating a Roth IRA or a Roth designated account to give yourself some more flexibility and options down the road. Not everyone can contribute directly to a Roth IRA, but there are lots of ways to solve that particular problem. So looking for ways for you to improve what you're doing now, there are lots of ways to get that done. Another example here is that if you happen to work for a large company and have a significant portion of your wealth invested in that company, I would likely not recommend you invest more there. But maybe consider investing into other areas of the global economy that you do not have current investments in, such as smaller company stocks or companies that are not based in the United States, for example, things of that nature. Please keep in mind that this is for educational purposes only and should not be considered financial advice. But these are my top 4 steps to look at if you are looking to improve your financial nest egg and you're in the ballpark of 15 years out. These are the first steps. Again, number 1 was to understand where you are in relation to your goals. Number 2 was to understand your strengths and weaknesses. Number 3 was to look at optimizing what you're currently doing. And finally is to look at adding additional strategies that can help improve your financial situation. I hope this segment and this episode of Money Mile was valuable for you. If it was, please share the podcast with your training buddies and friends. Keep in mind that if you work out, everything else will too. And we look forward to talking with you next time on Money Mile.